Good afternoon. Thank you for serving as an election judge. You are the guardians of democracy, as they say. Perhaps this is the first time you've served as an election judge, so you'll find this somewhat of interest to you, or you may be a repeat offender, and you've been here several times. And for that, if it's repetitious, I apologize, but sometimes it's good to hear things when we have that much of a lag. We certainly found what we can forget in 2 years between these elections. The county auditor has delegated the responsibility of training election judges for an election, and so that's why we're here today. To serve as an election judge, you have to be able to read, write, and speak English. So I think we're all qualified. I heard a lot of chattering out there, so it should be good. You are restricted from serving as an election judge if any of the following apply to you. If you're a candidate on the ballot of the precinct you're serving in, you're a relative of a candidate on the ballot, you can't live in the same house as a candidate on the ballot, and election judges who are relatives to each other can't serve in the same precinct at the same time. So, before we start, my name is Jean Prochnick. I am the Auditor-Treasurer at Brown County since 2014. If we were going to base this training on what I learned in my first 35 years at the county, we'd be here about 10 minutes because I didn't work much in elections before. So this is a new thing for me. But I have probably the best staff in the world. They've been very supportive. I'm truly indebted to all of their knowledge and how they are willing to share. We meet the statutory requirements of elections as required by our statute. The face of the election might seem really simplistic to all of us, or to somebody just observing an election. You go to the poll, you sign the roster, you get a receipt, you get a ballot, you fill out the ballot, you drop it in the box. That's all that's to it. Oh, if only people knew. There's really a lot more. In the polls that there's more things to do before and after that election, but I can assure you there was a lot of work that's gone into just getting ready for this primary, and we know the general will do the same for us again. I don't have all my staff here today because we still have to keep an office running. And so, but I do have Cindy Meyer is off here to the left. She'll be helping me. She's my elections lead. You see a lot of acronyms behind her name. That's all the processes that she might work in, and a lot of others. So this is just kind of a basic understanding. Steve Retcher is running my computer today, and he's prepared the ballots, got everything ordered, and made sure we had them on hand. And he has tested, retested, and probably tested again all of your cards that you're going to be given. And he can assure you that they are in good shape. So that we're very happy for. Not with us right now, Kelly Hadevec is back at the office, and so is Cindy Ruckert. Kelly is probably she helped me with my PowerPoint. She made it look pretty, so I appreciated that. And Cindy has been working with Steve, testing those ballots and making sure that everything is reading correctly on the test decks. Jill Dirksen is by the door, and Jill Dirksen is been working with all of your supplies and getting things organized for us, absentee voting, doing things in SVRS, that's the state voter registration system, healthcare facilities, things like that. So, and all my staff has been designated to serve on the absentee and mail ballot boards. We also have in the hallway there Nicole Jorgensen and Kim Samuelson. They work for the city of New Ulm. They're a phone call away or an email, and if we have a question about what happens out in the polls so that we can organize things better, they're always willing to help, and I truly am appreciative for everything that people have contributed to this process. Needless to say, we recognize each of you who serve in this county to provide excellent election administration to the voters. At the time of an election, we want the voters to be engaged and confident of the processes that we're doing. Our elections have to be done statutorily, obviously, and we want people to understand that their vote really does count. You are the face of elections, and you need to be trained to serve the voter with knowledge and about the voting process. At the County Auditor Treasurer's Office, we work to facilitate the election process. We've been reviewing the statutes and ensuring that the processes that we are training are done to preserve this election. So there's lots of players in this election and a huge investment of resources. Working together as a team, we're going to execute a best election ever. The format of this training this year is going to be a little different for you that are veteran judges. Generally, there's a video, and my grandson says, "Why don't you just show one of those cheesy videos and call it a day?" And I says, "No, Grandma likes to do things a little bit different," and so we're going with a PowerPoint presentation. I invite you to watch the video on the Secretary of State's website. It is pretty much the same as it has been in the past. It's not cheesy, but I'm not 13 either. So, but I invite you to do that. Okay. As an election judge, you will be taking a legally binding oath that you will uphold the elections law to the best of your ability. There are criminal penalties for intentionally misleading or deceiving a candidate or moving the advantage to someone that you're supporting. Precincts with more than 500 registered voters have to have at least 4 election judges in the precinct, and all others at least 3. 2 of the judges should represent 2 different major political parties. State law does allow you to take time off of work if you like, and you can get paid from your employer. They can reduce your pay by the amount of that you're getting paid as an election judge, but they can't say you can't be one. You do need to inform them 20 days ahead of time if you plan on doing that. Okay. There were some law changes that came about in 2016 that the legislature got a whole lot done this year, but a few things that they helped with elections, and one of them is, that's a big help to us at the county, is that when people come in to absentee vote, they can choose to either vote with an envelope by inserting their envelopes in their ballot within an envelope, or they can choose within 7 days before the election to drop it right in the ballot box. So they are already counted, they know their vote is valid. So that was one of the changes. The other change is the emergency election plan, which is a requirement of this statute this year, and I have been tasked as the Auditor Treasurer to prepare an election plan for Brown County. I have requested information from our townships and our cities about, what would we do if we were hit by a tornado, or we had a major snow disaster, or the building was burning, or whatever it might be. The emergency plan that we have to prepare this year is probably not as detailed as it will be in the future, but it's the start of it. So I have to have that done by September 1st. Any township who has not submitted their information, we've given some sheets out as a reminder today of the information I have to gather about everybody. So if you could get that to me as soon as possible, that would be helpful. 2020, the legislature approved a presidential primary, so you might have more work in the future, I'm not sure. We don't know any of the particulars that go with that presidential primary. The only thing we know is it's going to be very expensive and time-consuming. So we'll see how that pans out in the next few years as we move forward. And the other thing that was a big change in Brown County is that we have 7 townships that have opted to go with the mail ballot process. It is a process that has been allowed by statute for many years. It was never implemented in Brown County. 67 counties within the state of Minnesota use that process, and they have found it to be very beneficial in increasing voter turnout. So we hope that the people that are asked to vote by mail ballot will do so and return those ballots to our office and have their votes counted. So election judges, Obviously, we ask that you be professional in the polling place, calm, polite, respectful, and helpful. Seek solutions to the problems that people might have, and if you can't answer the questions, there's a chain of command. You have a head judge within your polling place, and if they're having trouble, we've got our number plastered on everything that's in there. Feel free to call our office, or the city will take care of questions in their area. So there is always, we will get a resolution to most everything. Unless aiding with accessibility at the voter's request, never touch a voter. And voter information is private. Anything you see in any of the rosters or anything, it's not something that we make note of or anything. It's just a piece of paper to us that are working. Even though many judges are affiliated with major political parties and often have strong political opinions, we have to ask that you take a step back, and in the polling place, you remain neutral. Everybody has the right to vote their own conscience, and we have to give them the opportunity to vote in a place free of influence. This can be difficult when there's a controversial question on the ballot, and especially a constitutional amendment. Many people might come up to you and ask you, what does that mean, this amendment? And you really can't give an opinion or anything regarding that question. The only thing you really can do is reread the question if they ask you to. The instructions are clearly written on the ballot, what they're to do, and they have to just choose. So don't inject any further explanations. As we prepare for Election Day, consider reading your election materials that you are provided today. I suggested to you, if you want to, you can watch that Secretary of State's video on their website. Dress comfortably. It's going to be a long day. Make sure you have considered meals and breaks if you are in a precinct that you are there for many, many hours in a row. And don't forget to vote. We want you all voting. You can either vote in your own precinct on a break if that works for you, or feel free to come up to the Auditor Treasurer's office and we will assist you with an absentee vote prior to the election. It might be late when you get finished. 8 o'clock might be when the polls close, but depending on how your day went, it could go a little bit longer. And of course, you have to bring the results back to the courthouse, so be prepared for a long day. Okay, persons allowed in the polling place are listed here. During voting hours, law allows only election judges and people directly engaged in voting and authorized persons to be present in that polling place. You need to ask unauthorized people to leave the polling place, and the head judge is to be monitoring that as the day moves along. We did get a letter from the Secretary of State's office that they are going to be making checks of some of our polling places in Brown County, along with throughout the state. They just didn't pick Brown County, but they selected the New Ulm Medical Center site and the Sleepy Eye, I think it was the second Ward 2, that they were going to visit this year. And they're checking for accessibility and making sure that you've got the signs put up, that the signs are in the parking lot, for handicapped voters, that the people, it's clearly marked where you go to vote. They just want you to they want to make sure that people know exactly what's happening the whole time. So not only those 2 sites that were indicated that they could stop at, we all should be conscious that who says they can't stop anywhere? I mean, these were announced visits. Maybe there's unannounced visits. I have no idea. So just be prepared. Campaigning is not allowed in or near the polling place, not even within 100 feet of the building. If the polling place is on public property, then there can't be any campaign materials on that property. If it's private property that's across the street, you can't restrict that campaign sign. The prohibition also includes display of campaign materials or a shirt or something coming into the polling place that reflects something that's on the ballot or states somebody's opinion about something. It's your responsibility to ask those people to cover up or remove the button or whatever. If they refuse, you need to document that in your incident log that you're going to have at the polling place. That's a real important thing. Exit polling, I'm not sure that I don't know if it's ever happened in New Ulm, but exit polling is allowed outside of the polling place after people vote, not within the premises. So we just will watch if anybody's doing that. So our morning starts at 6 a.m. You're going to be at the polling place, at least some of you are that have to work the entire day. Included this year, we have made some binders up for our judges. We just want to see if we can make it a little bit easier for you to work. There is a head judge, or there's a checklist within here that will guide you through opening the polls in the morning. It's a working document at this point because, as I said, we've never worked the polls. You guys work the polls. So if you, as you're completing the task, if it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, or it could be we don't do that way, just make notes on there, and we will see if we can revise that document so that it's a good working document in the future. The head judge, after you've done your setup, the head judge is going to administer an oath. Anytime you begin your duties as an election judge, you need to sign the oath and say that you're willing to serve. When the polls are to open at 7 o'clock, you announce that the polls are now open and that the voting hours you're going to know the voting hours are from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If your equipment isn't working, you still want to open the polls. You would open the auxiliary compartment in front of the machine and have people insert their ballots in there if the counter's not working. Call our office right away, and we'll see if we can get you squared away. We do have some extra machines now, so if we do have some breakdowns out there, we could maybe cover. But we had the maintenance people come through, and they checked all our machines, and everything was in working order for all of them, so that's a really good thing. Voters can use the AutoMark to mark their ballot or to verify that their ballot has no errors. When the ballot counter is operational again, 2 judges of different major political parties would pull the ballots out of that auxiliary compartment and insert them in the ballot counter. So, Secretary of State always provides this layout of a polling place. It's very generic. How many buildings have perfectly square rooms? I don't know, it doesn't happen too often in my world. But when you set up your polling place, consider access. Can all voters of different physical disabilities be able to maneuver through your polling place? Consider traffic flow. You want to make sure that there's no bottlenecks, and we try to not have waiting lines for people. You want to ensure that there's some privacy. Arrange the voting stations with privacy in mind, and make sure that the AutoMark also has some privacy feature to it. You might want to consider having an additional table set up within the polling place, and that table would be if somebody chooses not to use the voting booth, they can go anywhere and sit down and vote. We want to have chairs available for those that are waiting, and at least one voting booth that is wheelchair accessible. That would include a chair. Make sure that you indicate disability parking spots outside of the building. Mark the route to the accessible entrance, mark the route to the voting room, and post your informational posters. You'll find all of that stuff in your supply box. There's some required things that have to go on at the polling place, and one of them is you have to have a United States flag on display during polling hours. Display all the signs in your supply box in clear view so everybody can see them. Post your voting hours. We've got that's also in the head judge manual, the document that is in there. Verify that the sample ballot posters match the ones that you're going to be handing out to voters, and you want to hang those. One you want to hang at standing height and one for someone that would be sitting. Display the voter's Bill of Rights. If your voting location is tucked back, there's signage included that will provide arrows to get people where they're supposed to go. Okay. The AutoMark, make the station private and wheelchair accessible. You want to test the device. Compare paper ballots to offices and candidates displayed on the screen. Feel free as election judges to use the AutoMark. It's not just for people with disabilities. We think that you will gain an understanding of how the machine works, and that way you'll be a better assistance to the voters who do need it. So that is not a problem to use it. The ballot counter reads the ballots and stores vote totals for reporting after the polls close. All ballots boxes have one compartment for voted ballots and another one for the auxiliary compartment, which is what we've talked about if your machine should shut down. Before you start, make sure that the ballot box is free of any ballots, that there's nothing in there left over from maybe a test or whatever. Lock the ballot box. You want to mark a 6-foot boundary around that ballot box because no one's allowed in that area except the voter. And follow the head judge instructions for printing the zero tape and verifying offices and candidates are correctly displayed on there. We're going to say this several times. The zero tape should never be cut from the first results tape that comes out of that machine. We have to show that we started with nothing and we now have some votes. So never cut the zero tape from the first results. There's quite a few different judges that can work within a polling place. Not all polling sites would need as many people as a large one. Greeter judges will probably be more utilized in our larger precincts, City of Sleepy Eye, New Ulm, and Springfield. As a greeter judge, you direct the flow of voters and help with the duties as the head judge might assign. You're going to observe activity around the building and what's happening, and if somebody needs to, wants to curbside vote, and we'll talk about that later. You want to make sure that people aren't lingering around the polling place and campaigning. And your duty would be to welcome the other people to the polling place, direct the voters to the appropriate place, either to register or to sign the roster to gain a ballot. And if there's lines or anything, certainly provide for the comfort of the voters. Give them a chair if they want to. Take a few minutes, that's fine too. We're going to provide greeter lists for our 3 large cities. And the greeter list is just a compilation of names, and that is going to help with getting people to the right place. The voter turnout is predicted to be high in November. So we want to make sure that we can get people through that polling site as fast as possible. This is kind of an example of what the greeter list would look like. A greeter would check to see if the person walking into the polls is on that list, and if they are, they would direct them to the registration, or the roster judge, and have them sign in. And if they are not on the list and they live within that precinct, they would direct them to the registration table. The number on the very left-hand side is the voter ID number, and that voter ID number is something you'll use if one of these people vouch for another person that they're eligible to vote in that precinct. Okay, as technology goes, we certainly find that there's many, many tools that we can use, and one of them that's a really nice tool, Secretary of State has a poll finder. We want to make sure people are in the right places to vote, and so this is an opportunity. We've got this website address In your binders, some of you may not have good internet access at your poll place. Call us. We are willing to help. That's not a problem. But if you wanted to access it on your own, you're certainly welcome to. It's a very simple process, putting in a zip code, and you'll end up putting in a street address. So that's a good deal. Using the precinct finder, oh wait, I'm on a quiz. We're going to have tests as we go along today. And so I'm going to turn this over to Cindy for a little bit, and she's my tester. She's going to see if you listen.
Jean gave me the fun job of keeping you all awake and letting you show us how bright and knowledgeable you are. And if we do well on these quizzes, she promised not to quiz anybody at the end of we can just go home. So, Jean.
This one is not there. Sorry.
Sorry. First question, the precinct finder should be used to verify the address of, indicate all that apply. We can just chime out the answers, or if not, I can pick on tables. Anybody have an idea? There could be more than one answer. B is one. Every voter who is not sure if they are in the correct polling place, you would look here, and that would help you make sure they are in the right spot. And the other one is A, every voter who registers to vote on election day. That would be the non-registered voters, because your registered voters would already appear on the roster.
And that's all.
That was quick.
Yeah, it's a quick one. They get rougher. Okay, roster judge duties. As a roster judge, you sign in voters who are already registered. The principal tool of the roster judge is the roster, which is a list of all registered voters within your precinct. If you have a very large precinct, you certainly can split your roster up. I know that many cities do. Split it up between alphabetically, but identify your tables so people know where to go. The information contained in this roster is confidential. Election judges should not examine the roster data other than what is necessary to assist the voter standing in front of them. The only time a voter can see the roster is a time when they must sign their name. Each precinct is supplied this roster in your supplies, and we've put in forms that included in the binder, forms that might be of help to you as you go along in the day. There is notice of a deceased voter you'd find in there. If somebody informs you, you can fill that out. Voter receipts are numbered and provided to voters as a ticket to receive their ballot. We are providing the oath that the voters take. It's a small oath that's on the top of the sheet. There's an oath that is in large print that you can set by your table. If people, you can tell them this is what you're signing here if they wanted to read it, making it a little easier for them. They're also included in your box, as always. There's a magnifier for so people can see better. There's a signature guide to help voters sign within their block. Do not make marks on the roster. Notes about a roster correction. If you see somebody, they say their middle initial is maybe different, or something like that, or their birth date is listed wrong, jot it on the roster correction form. Don't put it in the roster. Don't cross things off in there. Do it on that form. And this is just an example of a roster. It's a legal document that indicates that a voter has cast a vote. When we're done with the election, we're going to go through each of these rosters, and we scan into the state system all the people that have voted, and that's part of your voter history. And so we like it clean, and we like to be able to see exactly what happened. Do not mark an X when you want to show a voter where they're to sign. We've got little Post-it notes that say sign here that you can just pick up and set it right by their name and have them sign there. That will guide them to the appropriate line. Again, if the voter's name, address, or date of birth is wrong on the roster due to a clerical error, mark that on the roster correction form and we'll get it fixed. If a voter should sign on the wrong line, you just want to draw an arrow from, one line to the other. You don't have to have them re-sign. This is what the roster correction form looks like. Very simplistic. Just fill in the information that you need. All right. When a voter comes to your table, you ask the voter their name and address. You don't allow the voter to dig through the roster and look for their name. You look it up for them. What's in here is not public information. If a voter hands you their ID, their driver's license, make sure that you say that's not necessary so that other people standing in line don't think they have to dig for their license, because you don't have to show identification at that point because you are on the roster. If you can't find the voter's name, on that roster, you have to think, where could it be? Are they in the right precinct? Let's check the address. Should you be here? Maybe the voter hasn't voted within the last 4 years. Then their name would have been dropped from the roster. If they got married and they came in by their married name, they were registered by their married name, even though they're listed there then under their married name, they have to re-register. You have to have a new form filled out. You're going to want to check for roster notations. We'll talk about those in just a little bit. Point to the voter's oath at the top of the rosters, and we will give you a large one of those there as well so that people can read it easier. After the voters sign the roster, issue them their receipt. If the district or your precinct contains more than one school district, then you want to make sure that you have given them the right ballot, that the school district is listed on the receipt so that the ballot judge will give the appropriate ballot. We shouldn't have that problem in the primary because there's not that much on there and nothing that has to do with the schools. So again, the roster is a legal document. It indicates a voter it's their history. Maintain it carefully. It is a very important document. Notations indicating a challenged voter mean that the individual cannot sign the roster without completing a few additional steps. Your head judge will address the issues or instruct you on how to resolve them. In any discussions with people you have regarding roster notations, it is essential that you remain courteous and tactful. Do whatever you can to maintain their voters' privacy. There's some really common voter notations. I'm sure you've all seen the AB, which is an absentee, and CID and challenge postal return. We'll talk about those a little more because you're going to see them more often. But there's notations that are less frequent, and some of them say challenged address. I'm going to make sure I read them so I don't screw them up. The voter's residence at the address on the rosters in question. Challenged AB address. The voter submitted an absentee ballot application that lists a residential address different from the address currently listed on their voter record. There's a challenged felony notation, and that the voter may have had a previous felony conviction. A voter with a previous felony conviction can vote after they finish their entire sentence. This includes any probation and parole, commonly known as being off paper. At that point, their voting rights are automatically restored. Challenged other. The voter's eligibility is challenged, but the reason is not available. Challenged, voted out of precinct. The voter was recorded as having voted in the wrong precinct at the last election. The voter will need to provide the roster judge a proof of residence used for Election Day registration prior to voting. If the voter provides proof of residence that this address is correct, draw a line through the roster notation. The
Voter will then proceed to sign the roster and vote. If the voter's address is different, but the voter still resides in the precinct, direct them to the registration table. If the voter's address is in a different precinct, provide the polling location they're to go to and offer them, give them an idea of what they're going to have to take along to prove that they can vote there. These are the most common roster notations that you'll run into. The AB is an absentee voter. They voted at the county offices prior to the election, so they obviously can't vote again. On election day, we'll be calling out to the precincts and letting you know if we have any additional AB voters that we'll have you jot down on your rosters to make sure it's up to date. CID, the voter is a new Minnesota voter who registered by mail, but election officials could not verify the application information. They probably did it online. And so you just need to see their ID at that point, and then they can vote. Challenge, postal return. The voter was sent a postal verification card that was returned to the county auditor because it was not deliverable to the person at the address on record. So verify the address and then you can move on. A voter who cannot sign their name can use a mark. We have to respect the fact that there are disabilities. They can use a stamper to put their name there, or they can have another person print the voter's name in the voter's presence, and the election judge can certify that by putting their initials witnessed by with the election judge's first name, initial, and full last name. My apologies. These additional markings need to stay on the voter's line in the roster so we can prevent errors when scanning into history. So try to keep them in the box. It's kind of tough sometimes, I know. Curbside voting. There may be instances when voters are unable to come into the precinct to vote. In this case, the voter can request that you bring a ballot out to their vehicle. Your head judge will assign 2 people to take care of that task. And this is a procedure that you would follow. You're going to go out to the car and you're going to get the voter's name and you're going to jot it down. And you're going to return to see if that name is on the roster. If the name is on the roster, you take a certificate of registered voter form found in the roster judge binder, and you're going to take it out to the voter, and they're going to sign that in place of signing on the roster itself. If the voter wasn't on the roster, then they're going to have to register, so you're going to have to take them a registration document. Ask for proof of residence if they need to register. Then you're going to process the forms. You're going to give the certificate to the roster judge or the registration judge, depending on which way they were coming into the polls, and exchange it for a receipt. You have the roster or the registration judge write curbside on the appropriate signature line in the roster, and then you attach the certificate to that page. You exchange the voter receipt with the ballot judge for a ballot and a secrecy folder, and then you take that out to the voter and you allow them to vote. Only provide assistance to the curbside voter if they request it, and then of course there still are 2 judges there, so it's appropriate. You ask the voter to wait until you can confirm that the ballot has been accepted, so you carry the ballot back into the polling place, run it through the machine, and then go back out to the voter and confirm that their ballot has been cast. Now it's quiz time.
Before I start the quiz, I had some people ask me about the notations and some of the stuff that we just got done covering. Is there any questions on any of that? Nope. Okay, a voter signs the roster and then mentions that they recently married and changed their name. What should you do? It's D, direct the voter to the registration table to update the registration.
Just take the red ones and you've got it, the whole thing.
Okay. What is a roster notation? And can someone give me an example? AB is one. A roster notation is a word or abbreviation on the line in the polling place roster where the voter signs their name indicating doubt regarding the eligibility to vote in the polls. A voter comes to sign the roster and the notation challenge postal return is next to their name. The right one, Jean? The right one. Okay. When administering the roster challenge process, what question is most important? A, their current address. A voter sees that someone else has a ready sign next to their name. Upon inspection, you find that the voter directly above signed on the wrong line. How will you handle this situation? B, ask the head judge for guidance. Or we also know you can cross the line out and have them, don't put their name down, not their name. What does AB mean on the signature line in the roster? C, the person voted by absentee and cannot vote at the polling place. Name some tips for finding names in the roster. Okay. See if the first and last names were switched, as they show. Check multiple combinations for two-word or hyphenated names. And see if the apostrophe was omitted in some of the names. Under what circumstances must a voter who appears on the roster re-register? Indicate all of those that apply. A and B. If the name was misspelled, you would just make that notation at the end of the roster so we can get it corrected again then at our office. But they would not need to re-register.
Well, you guys are listening well, thank you. Another one of the judges that has an important role in the polling place, as they all do, is the registration judge. You conduct election day registrations for those who need to register. They say that approximately 10 to 20% of Minnesota voters do register on election day. I know that varies by precinct. I hope that we can do a better promotion prior to the election and get some registrations on the rosters prior to that, because I know that holds up activity in the lines. To register, a person must be a United States citizen, at least 18 years of age on election day, and a resident of the state of Minnesota for 20 days. They must be finished with all parts of any felony sentence, including any probation and parole. A person can vote while under guardianship unless a judge specifically revoked those rights. A person cannot vote if the court has ruled that they are legally incompetent. We also have a registration binder, a judge binder, with the tools that you will need to do your job, and we'll look at some of them as we move along here. When a voter wants to register, there's some steps that you're going to want to follow, and of course the first one is you want to verify that they're in the right polling place. You can only vote in the precinct where you reside. And it's not uncommon that people do go to the wrong polling place. I know you wouldn't find that so much in a township, but within the cities, people sometimes do. Sleepy Eye and Springfield have it nicer. Both polling places are within the same building, so you don't have to walk too far. But within New Ulm, we want to be real careful because streets are divided, and one side of the street will vote in one polling place and another at another site. So be conscious of that. And if you're ever unsure about where somebody should be, give us a call. That's Poll Finder is just a click away for us. We're ready for you that day. You're going to want to confirm that the voter has not voted absentee, and we talked about having that listed on the roster. We'll be making those phone calls to the polling places to let you know who has newly, if there's any new people that have voted and they weren't on your roster. You're going to ask the voter to complete a Minnesota voter registration application. You want to make sure they review the oath before signing and dating. Review the voter registration application and ask the voter to complete any blank spots. We'll show you what we all need filled in, and then confirm with a proof of residence. Everyone who registers on election day must have proof of residence in that precinct. There's proofs that are authorized by law, and you can only use those, and we'll be showing you those as well. You complete the election judges section on the bottom of the voter registration application, and have the voter complete and sign the new registrant's roster, and then you may issue them a voter receipt so that they can get a ballot. If you want to look at pages 53 to 55 in your handbook, if you wanted to see the registration application that is in there, there's sections that are shown that are highlighted that we need to have filled out. They're required sections. So you got 1 through 4, and then 5 is optional, and then 6 through 8 all have to be filled in with information. And as they sign the oath, if they're giving any false information, it is a felony, and they're signing off to that, and the penalties that go with that. If possible, if you can get information filled in the middle sections, 5, 6, and that would be helpful. The registration updates, voters can provide previous name and address information to indicate if they are currently registered to vote under a different name or at a different address. These voters complete a new voter registration application even if they reside in the same apartment complex, but only change apartments. So can't move across the hall in your apartment without apartment building without re-registering to vote. So that is, and your responsibility then is, that is really blurry, sorry. As a registration judge, there's the bottom part is for the election judge to fill out. You're going to fill out the ward, the precinct, school district, and put your initials in. And there's 3 categories that you can determine or verify that a person is a registered voter within that precinct. And we're going to be looking at those in just a second here, but it would be considered column A, B, and C as we go through, or category A, B, and C when we get to that part. So to determine a voter's residence, we need to consider a few things about the voter. You can only have one residence. A voter may have 2 houses, but you would ask them which one do you sleep in the most often. That is your home. If you end up having a voter that comes in and has met with disaster, their house has had damage and they can't reside in it right now, and the owner plans on returning to that home, that will be their residence. They can vote in that precinct. If they don't want to, or they're not going to return, then they would register in the precinct that they would reside in at that time, even if it's temporary. Of course, there's always an exception to the rule, and one of those is students, and students can choose to vote either in where they're living with at school. The MLC students can vote in their precinct here in New Ulm, or if wherever they live throughout the country, they can vote in their home precinct if they desire to do that. So within your registration binder, we've provided this guideline to help you determine and validate a person's residency. If a person has, we'll look at each of the options. If you want to go to the next one, Steve. There's category 1, that was the top, and in category 1 it's really quite simple. They had their license, the license matched their address. that they're telling you everything is above board. It can be a driver's license, a learner's permit, or a Minnesota ID card, or the yellow receipt that you might have because you had to get a new license. Those are all legitimate identifications and require only that form. If they don't have a license with an address that the new license hasn't come through, or they just moved and it's from another state, whatever, they can show their license and something from column 2. So one thing from column 1, one thing from column 2. And so if you have any questions, that's all going to be there. So I hope that's a help to you as you move through those, if there's challenges on it. And then the last one category is happens more on a rarity as opposed to the common. And so I guess, you can read them. I suggest that as you're waiting, maybe you've got some time between people, read the information in your binder and familiarize yourself with some of these unusual things. I'm not going to go through each one of them. A voter can have somebody vouch for them, and on the back of the registration form, there's the ability to do that, and there's a space for you to put that voucher ID, their voter ID in there. That's that number we showed you on it's either on the roster or on the greeter judge's roster. You can stick that in there, and they will sign that document as well. Again, the information in the registration judge binder is confidential. Voters have the right to their privacy. Make sure you keep it tucked away. It doesn't have to be sitting in open view. As the registration judge, you will retain all the applications within that binder. They're going to be returned there. We're going to have an oath in there for you to set out so that people can read one, and it's a little larger. And when the polls close, the number of the voters that you registered should equal the number of receipts that you handed out. So things should be good there. That's always our goal. And now we'll do a little bit of a quiz and move on.
Showtime. What is one of the first steps when registering a voter? A, confirm the voter is at the correct precinct using the precinct finder. Mickey moved from St. Peter to Sleepy Eye 5 days before the election. Can he vote in Sleepy Eye? Yes, he can. The answer is B. A voter must live in Minnesota for 20 days, not in a specific precinct for 20 days.
That's a trick question.
It is, yeah. What was the question? Yep. The precinct poll finder. Jean had that. It'll be in their binder, correct? And it's a website that you can access. And
I'll get it to you on break.
yeah, we can do a little demonstration up here if you want.
Yeah, we'll get it to you when we take a break. Okay.
It'll also be included in the information that you get in your packets. Okay, Paige forgot her ID. Can she leave and come back with it later? Yes. Voter can leave and come back anytime during voting hours to register and vote. Can a voter who registers on election day vouch for another voter? C. Yes, as long as the voter did not also register by being vouched for. Who cannot be a voucher? The answer is A and C. A candidate at the election cannot vouch, and a person who registers the same day with a voucher cannot vouch for somebody. A voter comes to register who has a felony conviction. What should you tell him? The answer is B. He can vote if he has completed all the terms of his sentence, including probation and parole. And you may run into that. It isn't up to us to decide whether he has completed that or not. That's why they're signing the oath. If they have a question, some people, I have gotten that question where they're not quite sure if their voting rights have been reinstated, then please call our office, because we do have access to the Department of Corrections to verify if they have served and their voting rights have been restored or not. But otherwise, if they say they are, it's not up to us to question that. They're signing the oath. Okay, which of the following is not a requirement to vote? Which one? C? It's not a requirement. The answer is C.
We fix it on the front.
Yep, we fixed it up there, we didn't here. It says be a resident of the precinct for at least 20 days. Which of the following documentations may not be used as proof of residence? The answer is B, a property tax statement. And the reason for that is a property tax statement does not mean you're residing there, you just own that property and you're paying taxes. That doesn't prove their residency. A woman who is under guardianship comes to vote, but her guardian is not present. Can she vote? Anybody? She can vote. Yes, it's D. A person under guardianship can vote as long as a court order did not specifically revoke their voting rights. A voter tries to register who has a heavy accent and does not speak English very well. You suspect that they might not be a U.S. citizen. What should you do? C, you're right. If the voter provides the necessary documentation, you must register the voter. Election judges cannot request additional documentation or challenge a voter based on suspicions.
The ballot judge, another responsibility within the polling place. Before I go ahead, I was asked a question during break, and I just want to reiterate, when a person is doing curbside voting, you are acting as the voter as you walk through the polling place. You are getting their ballot for them after they have signed that document that says that they're voting curbside. You take that document in, you get the receipt, you give the receipt to the ballot judge and get the ballot for the voter. The voter does not get the receipt, so that you don't run into a problem with that. The receipt stays within the polling place. Okay? So, here's the ballot judge. When you get to the polls, we're going to ask that you verify that the number of ballots that you have, the total number is appropriate. There's a document to sign that says, yes, I accepted 300 ballots or whatever number it is. When you open a pack of ballots, we ask that you count the ballots within there. Sometimes a pack could be plus or minus one, you just never know. They do a really good job packing, but you just never know if you're going to have it, and it's going to save you a lot of headaches if you know that there was only 98 instead of 100. So do that. You want to confirm that your ballot is the one that belongs in that precinct. Check the tape, see that things are coming out in the same order, it's the same people on there. You're going to initial each ballot. 2 election judges will do that. They don't have to be different parties, just 2 elections judges initial the ballot. Don't initial too many in advance. I mean, know what you can feel what for the flow of traffic and mark them that way. Precincts that are shared precincts, we have Milford and Siegel as an example, and a lot of Bashaw, North Star, and Stately, I think, are all 3 together. We have attached to your ballots a different colored pen that you will initial them with. each being a different one. Because when they go in the machine, they're not sorted. And when you're asked at the end of the night to remove the ballots from the machine, we're not asking that you sort the ballots or do anything with them. You just take them out of the machine and you put them in the voted ballot envelope. You don't have to sort which ones belong to which township. Granted, if you've got an error, you might have to do something, but hopefully that doesn't happen. If in fact there was a recount, the reason we're doing the different colors, other counties kind of had suggested this, it's an easy way to flip through the ballots and divide them, as opposed to reading the little print on the bottom. Our eyes are getting old, and so they just said that was a handy little trick they've used, so we tried to implement that. I think I said open the ballots only as many as you need. You don't want to open a new pack of ballots unless you absolutely have to at 8 o'clock at night, because you're going to count all 100 of those to verify how many you have left. You're going to have secrecy covers at your table. You can provide those to the voters. I'm not sure who all uses them, but their vote is private, and so you help them if they want that. We're going to be aware of split precincts and ensure that the correct ballot is presented to the voter. We don't have to worry about that again in the primary. That's a school district thing when we get that far. Collect, as a ballot judge, you're going to collect that receipt from the voter, number it consecutively, and then you might want to keep your receipts in clumps of 25, maybe staple them together or whatever. Double check your counts as you go along. Check the machine as you go through the day. See that the number on your receipt is the same as the number on the machine, and life is moving smoothly at that point. And you know, at 12 o'clock, I know I balanced then, and at 2 o'clock, things were good, you know. So then you kind of narrow down where the mistake could have happened if you end up with a problem. You're going to issue the voter their ballot and offer them a secrecy cover, and then you will direct them to either the voting booth or the automark machine. There is the form that you're going to sign, that's on the next slide, Steve, when you pick up your supplies, you're going to sign that you did get that many ballots in your box, and that's just going to come back to us. It's a required form, not the form so much, but the ruling to do that we know, everybody knows that the ballots move from place to place, and the same number are always moving and not somebody taking some and filling a ballot box. The next topic is ballot questions, and we talked just a tad bit about that before. Don't interpret what a ballot question means or what impact it would have if it passed or failed. You read the instructions for the ballot question, but don't inject any opinions on that. We know that this year there's going to be a constitutional amendment on the ballot. We saw in the paper that the city of New Ulm will have their 0.5% sales tax on the ballot, and we will have something from North Star Township at this point that's going to be on the ballot as questions. So just read them the question if they have they want to understand it. That's all you can do for them. I never issue the last ballot in the polling place, and I don't think we're ever going to have a problem with that. Steve Morton takes care of us with ensuring that we've got enough ballots ordered and that we shouldn't run out. But if there is some big influx in some particular precinct, don't use the last one. We're going to use that to make copies. Just call us and we'll get them out to you. There are times when a voter makes a mistake on a ballot and the ballot counter won't read it. This is for the ballot judge. You might want to offer them an alternative ballot. You would mark it as spoiled, and it would go in the spoiled ballot envelope. And you can issue a new receipt at that point. They don't re-sign or anything. Don't examine the spoiled ballot. I mean, it's still their vote, and it should be kept private. If the voter requests your help in signing or doing something with the ballot, always have 2 judges there of different parties so that it's all above board. If by chance you find a ballot within the ballot in the voting booth that's just laying there, somebody walked out because they just didn't think, I don't know who I'm going to vote for or what I'm going to do, or they had to hurry and leave for an emergency and just left it, take that ballot and mark it as spoiled and put it in the spoiled ballot envelope. So there's the ballot counter judge. His job or her job is to monitor and troubleshoot the ballot counter. We've got one here. Know that after, if anybody wants to work with or play around with the ballot counter or the auto mark, we welcome that. That's not a problem if you need to familiarize yourself with how it works. The ballot judge is going to monitor that, and he's going to provide assistance as needed based on the messages that might appear on the screen, and they're going to issue the I voted stickers. Unless the voter requests it, they should request your assistance in putting the ballot in. Don't. They should insert their own ballot within the machine. Ensure that there's a 6-foot perimeter around the ballot machine. That is for voters only. It's not for other people to be hanging around having a chat there. It's a quiet place to insert your ballot. We've provided masking tape in the buckets for you to mark off that 6-foot area, and so that should make it easy for everyone to understand. After the voter's finished, give them their I voted sticker, but don't put it on their body. You hand it to them. If the ballot counter indicates an error with the ballot, ask the voter if they'd like assistance. Some of the things that you would find that might happen when the ballot is inserted, it could be skewed. Maybe it went just a little crooked. You know, we can take it out again. You can try it in a different orientation. Maybe a corner got bent on the top and the bottom will go through. That ballot will go in anyway, and it will read it appropriately. Overvoting is if, might be a message you might see, and that means that the voter selected more candidates than they should have. There was maybe only 2 that you could vote for, and they voted for 3, whatever it might be. That's an overvote. You can offer the voter a new ballot and mark it as spoiled. If they want to run it through anyway, you would have to inform them that their vote in that area would not be counted. In a partisan state primary, voters can only vote for candidates of one party, so you might get that as a message. And some voter may have been completely confused and just decided they wanted their name to be on the roster as showing up at the polling place and really never marks any candidates for office. The voter can cast a blank ballot, so you just would hit the button to accept it. Always explain the error if there is one to the voter. See if there's a resolution to it, and the voter may ask you to just cast it as presented. If the ballot counter isn't working, you want to call our offices and we'll see what we can do for you. Don't keep the voters waiting. As we said, use the auxiliary compartment in the front. The voters could use the automark then. If they've cast their ballot, they could run it through the automark and see if it works, you know, and then at least they know that all their votes will be counted. After the machine is operating again, you're going to take the 2 judges from different political parties are going to pull the ballots out of that auxiliary compartment, and they're going to insert them in the ballot counter. Hopefully, it wouldn't be late into the night before you got to that. We would hope it would be earlier. I don't think we'll run into ballot boxes being full, but if they were, I guess we want you to take them out of there and you need to seal them up at that point, but I don't think we fill up our ballot boxes. All right, it is quiz time.
I came back, sorry. Okay, what must 2 judges do to each ballot before it can be given to a voter? Right, they must initial it. What should you do first when the ballot counter rejects a voter's ballot? Anybody? It's C. Explain the error message on the ballot counter to the voter. What is an overvote? It's A, voting for more candidates than allowed for that office. True or false? A voter can only vote for candidates from one political party in a primary election. True. A voter asks how a particular ballot question was placed on the ballot. How should you respond? C. You should avoid discussing candidate or ballot questions altogether. What should you use to demonstrate to the voter how to mark their ballot? B and C would be acceptable. I don't think we actually use C here. Some precincts do, but here we don't. After opening a sealed packet of ballot, what should you do? B, count the ballots. A voter wants to vote on an unoccupied table instead of in a privacy booth. What should you say? C, it's okay. When should you issue a ballot to a voter? C, after the voter presents a voter receipt to you. What is an undervote? Only two choices, 50-50 chance. It's B, voting for fewer candidates than is allowed for that office. What is a spoiled ballot? Anybody? D, a ballot that has been returned to the election judge in exchange for another blank ballot. The ballot counter has stopped working. What should you do? B is correct. Have voters insert their ballots in the auxiliary compartment of the ballot counter. How many feet away must others keep from the ballot counter? 6 feet, good. We're on to the head judge.
Well, we're nearing the end of our training, which is good. The head judge duties, we're just going to go over them so that you know a little bit what you can do with your head judge, what they are going to be responsible for. The head judge is the unsung hero of the polling place. Consider that person as your go-to person with any questions. They're gonna be able to answer it, or if they can't, we've provided them reference materials. The election guide that you have in your hands today, there's one in the booklet. So that way there's for sure one in the polling place. There's your first reference, and if you can't get your question answered there, you certainly know that you have access to us. The head judges, if there's head judges here today, they will be asked to stay for an additional hour of training. That is required by statute as well, because we have to show them a little bit more of the complex duties and some of the situations that might come up. The head judge will oversee the polling place, assign you as judges your specific tasks, and give you directions as needed. They're going to perform some pre-election day duties. They're going to contact the election team and make sure that they're at the polling place at the correct times. They're going to pick up their precinct materials. Most of them have been picked up for the election next week, and they're going to perform the setup activities, and hopefully, I'm sure they enlist some help to do that as well. They're going to ensure that the supplies are all ready before the polls open and oversee the polling place setup. Administer the oath to you, and this is also a requirement that has to be done. They're going to have you sign that document that you took the oath. If need be, they're going to have to conduct emergency training if we have to fill in somebody quickly. to do the duties if something happens in the polling place. They're going to resolve questions and problems on election day, and they are responsible for ensuring that the election forms that have to be returned to the county are completed and accurate. We're going to ask the head judges to look in their buckets, their supply boxes, and ensure that they have everything that they need. We have made special effort this year to go through those buckets carefully. We've tried to look at the statutes and provided the things that it says you're going to need so that you can adhere to the statute. If there's something missing that you think you should have, please mark it down. There's an election day feedback form that you're going to find in the head judge binder. Tell us what it is you need. I know one of the responses that came back last year is that somebody needed carrot cake. We're not serving. I'm not much of a cook, so please bring your own carrot cake if you want that. But it was a cute remark. I appreciated the humor. Make sure that you, as head judges, secure the ballots prior to the election. Don't leave them in a car overnight. That's a big no-no. The head judge is going to be in charge of administering challenges in the polling place. The only action a challenger may take is to contest a voter's eligibility if and only if they have personal knowledge of that voter's ineligibility. Most election judges will not have to deal with challengers, and I think that's probably a really good thing. But we'll discuss that with them in their little meeting after this. Voters have a right to receive assistance from election judges or a person of their choice, except an agent of their employer, their union, or a candidate. This could include assistance moving around within the polling place, or reading materials for them, or completing the forms, or marking ballots. Two judges of two different major parties may help a voter mark their ballot. Avoid any action that may influence the voter. Do not give advice or reveal how you voted or how they voted either. Always direct questions to the voter, not to the person assisting. We have included in the binders, also in the registration binder, to assist people with that use English as a second language. We have a Spanish document in there, thinking that was probably more prevalent, but if there is someone that does come to the polls, by some chance, New Ulm is pretty, have too many different people, types of people here, but of orientations, whatever. There is a resource in there that allows us to get additional registration forms in other languages. So if somebody has a request, we can get it fairly quickly. It's just a matter of contacting the state. So let us know. An assistant may only physically mark ballots on behalf of a maximum of 3 voters during the day at that election. But you can provide physical assistance, assisting somebody through the polling place to as many as you want. The incident log is a real good tool for you in the polling place. It's a place where you need to mark down unusual things that happened. We talked about the person that may have worn some kind of campaign or political information on a shirt or a button, that kind of thing. We asked them to remove it. If they don't, you need to put it in the incident log. If the media comes, you indicate the length of time that they're spending within the polling place and who it was that was there. You're going to want to keep track if you had any issues with something you wrote on the wrong line or did something. It might help you in balancing at the end of the night as well. And so now it is 8 o'clock, and I suppose we all think we get to go home. I guess we're wrong, aren't we? It probably is a time when most of the stress from the day takes place, maybe. The polls will close at 8 o'clock. As a greeter judge, you may be If there still is a line, you want to stand behind the last person that's there, because at 8 o'clock, that is all that can vote. No one else is allowed to. While you're doing the closing of the polls, people are allowed in the polls to observe what you're doing and make notes. That you can't discriminate against that. We have included also in your binder an opening and closing polls checklist. It's going to help you finish off your end-of-day tasks. Again, like the opening the polls, it is a working document. We have never worked the polls, and we want to make sure that we get that document listed how it operates out in the real world. So feel free to make comments and notes on there and offer feedback to us. We'll get her fixed for you for the next time. We consider the primary election with not much on the ballot this time as a practice session for the general, where we know that they predict that there will be a lot of people coming to the polls. So let's practice and see if we can get her right. In the head judge binder, you have to fill out a summary statement as a head judge, and that there's a couple new requirements. You have to indicate on the summary statement this year the number of election judges that worked in your polling place and how many voting booths were available for voters. I'm assuming that the state is going to be doing some kind of a survey of some sort. I don't know, but it is a requirement. So fill that out. But we've included in your binder a blue copy of the summary sheet, and that blue copy is a working copy. It's where you can fill out your numbers, and if you make a mistake, big deal, cross it out, fix it, do what you need to do. When you've got everything balanced out, transfer those numbers to the white one that is going to be the official copy, and that way we have a very clean copy, and if we were challenged or had a recount, things look a lot smoother than something that's crossed off and it looks like there were problems out in that polling place. So let's try and keep it as good as we can. We have a lot of envelopes that get returned to us, and you will see them in there. One of them is your voted ballots are going to go into, there's a large envelope in your supply box. You're going to seal the ballots up in that envelope, and you're going to sign across that seal. We don't open those up. Polling places that are shared polling places, you can put your ballots within one. I'm sure there is one of those envelopes in all of the supply boxes, but you just need to put it in one. That'll be fine. If you've got problems or if you want to split them up, we're not going to argue that either. It's not a big deal. If your spoiled ballot envelope and your duplicate ballot envelope, you certainly, if they're empty, you can put 0 on them and just sign across the back, and that's fine too. That way it looks like you acknowledge the fact that you looked in there and know there were none, and that just makes things look like everything's been checked. If in doubt about any procedure that you're working on, please call our office. We will help you out. And one of the things that we have always to remind our election judges when they come to the courthouse is make sure before you come that your tapes from your machine are signed. You're going to run an A tape, or it's the 0 tape with the first results. You're going to sign the 0 tape, and you're going to sign the first results tape. That's going to go in your envelope A. Again, that's documented on your sheet, so you should be able to get that. Then it's going to run another results tape, and there's room for signatures again. Make sure you sign that tape. You're not required to, but you can run a third tape, and that tape is for your precinct, the totals for you. We won't be taking that in anywhere. So make sure, though, that you sign all tapes, and again, the 0 tape and the first results tape need to remain intact. All right. Staff at the office have really worked hard to put the materials together that you will need out in the polling place. We ask that you return all of them. Inside of your big supply bucket, there's a small shoebox type container that can contain supplies. You'll find tape and staplers and some sticky stuff to make you be able to count ballots quicker, that kind of thing, please return all of those things to that container. And unless you ask for something, if something's gone, unless you ask, we're not looking if it's there the next time. You need to be responsible for what's in that bucket and if it needs to be replaced. We're providing lanyards. If you see, I've been wearing mine. The lanyard is going to have your name on it, and it's also on the reverse side of it. The fact that you took election judge training today and that this is valid for 2 years is on there. So we want the lanyards back. We want to use them in future years. We think it makes you get the recognition that you deserve in the polling place, and people would know who to ask questions of if they're in there. So please return them. Follow the checklist closely and make sure that if there's changes to it, that you let us know. One more quiz, and then we're going to be closing her down.
Okay, which of the following buttons may be deemed political and so should be covered or removed by a voter in the polling place? All of the above. D. Can an assistant physically mark a ballot for a voter? C. Yes, as long as the assistant does not physically mark a ballot for more than 3 voters in the election. How many voters can an interpreter assist with registering to vote at the polling place? C. Unlimited. A voter wants to file a complaint about the election. How will you accommodate their request? C. Correct. Provide the voter with a have a complaint form. Are news media permitted in the polling place? C. Yes, if they can show ID and credentials, they're allowed. What should the election judge do if they find a campaign sign posted at the entrance to the polling place? C. Remove the sign and call local election officials. Now, who may not assist a voter in marking a ballot? D. A candidate. Thank you.
Okay. Final remarks. Counties are required to keep a record of all the people that have been trained. So if you looked inside of the booklet, the guide that we provided today, there's a training certificate. We ask that you complete that and turn it in on your way out. There'd be a box, I think that white box is there, Jill, that they can put them in, or maybe you can collect them. There is a requirement by statute that we keep them on hand, and we want to make sure we've got them this year. This is my first time through a training session with you. I certainly would welcome any feedback that you might have on how we can improve our session. I've already heard some things about somehow making the word bigger. It's a little tough. I think what we have to do is get people to sit in the front seats, but we will do our best at that. It certainly is something that we can consider in the future. In the townships and cities, public accuracy tests, your information is in your supply bucket to conduct that. You've all apparently posted it or published it in the paper what date your public accuracy test is going to take place. We have read and reread and had comments about how public accuracy tests can be done. And I think that in the future, I will be doing public accuracy tests at the county, and we can invite the townships in, and we're going to do one public accuracy test instead of having you all have to publish that. It's just a hit on everybody's budget. So we'll talk about that. It's not official. We will be sending out emails from now until the election to the clerks. I sent some out this morning regarding some information.
we're taking feedback and we're trying to get things figured out. So monitor your email if you would as a clerk so that you can keep track of what we've all got for ideas back at the county. All precincts are to return their election equipment to the License Bureau between November 9th, which is the date of the general election, and November 30th. Then we know we've got them all there and we don't have to call for them. We have put your supplies in those supply buckets, and they're in there. The little supplies are in a separate box. Please put them back in there. Keep it clean. When you come to the courthouse on the night on election night to present your results, you're going to we ask that you use the Washington Street entrance, which is also by the Law Enforcement Center back there. Come up to the second floor. The first thing that we're going to ask you for is for your results card, and then your tape, your zero tape and your A tape. So kind of have that on top, easy to get to. We're going to have to check you in. We have to also this year list the time that all people are returning their results. I don't want anybody speeding on Highway 14 to get to New Ulm to be first or anything. It's just a matter, I think they're just kind of monitoring when people get their results in. But we do have to fill that time in. So there's just a couple little things that are going to change, and we're setting up a little bit differently. Bear with us, and again, we'll be open for feedback, what worked and what didn't work. We do have the M100 here today and the AutoMark. We certainly would be willing to show anybody any of that information or run through some ballots if they want to see it. You're welcome to do that. And I thank you for choosing to be an election judge, helping us out with this important task. You're not required to memorize a lot of the stuff that was happening here today. I mean, you certainly did well on the quizzes. You answered the questions. You've got the basic knowledge of it. Things will go well. You'll probably be assigned a task within the polling place. You probably don't have to know everything that happens in the polling place, but you will be asked to know what you've got, your responsibilities. And again, we've provided as many guidelines and things that we think will help you do a good job. If there's something else that will, let us know. We'll provide that too in the future. If you want to be striving for extra credit, not that we hand it out, but you certainly can watch that Secretary of State video. It's pretty much going to be the same kind of thing, but it's going to be with people from the state that are conducting that. The primary election is next Tuesday, so we're gearing up for that. Our office is going to be open this Saturday for anybody who wants to absentee vote. If you wanted to vote before the election so that you were free to work the election, that's fine. We're going to be there from 10 to 3 on this Saturday. And we've talked about how the primary is an excellent way to practice for the general election. Let's make sure that we take time to fill out things appropriately and learn from it so that we can make November 8th go as smooth as possible and not be susceptible to a recount. One thing that I was asked to say too is that your precinct may only pay you for 2 hours of election judge training, even if you're doing the extra credit and those kinds of things. If you feel something differently, you might want to contact them and see how much they will pay. We're not involved in that part of it.